Why do American sports teams win a national tournament and call themselves world champions?
World champion of what? The United States?
Is it based on any sports merit or just good old American arrogance? I genuinely do not understand the mental gymnastics. Their logic is more flexible than Simone Biles. This entire controversy started in 2023 with American sprinter Noah Lyles, an actual world champion, giving this interview.
The thing that hurts me the most is that I have to watch the NBA finals and they have world champion on their head. World champion of what? The United States? Don't get me wrong. I love the US at times, but that ain't the world. That is not the world. We are the world. We have almost every country out here fighting, thriving, putting on their flag to show that they are represented. There ain't no flags in the NBA.
Noah Lyles will go down in history as the man who single-handedly roasted the entire NBA. As a European, I had no idea Americans truly believed they were world champions at every sport until I saw their reaction to this video. Now, this triggered a lot of Americans and a lot of NBA players with fragile egos. And they all started hating on Noah Lyles, who's an American and a world champion of the world. You had NBA players like Kevin Durant, who had an amazing NBA career, saying somebody help this brother. Like, you would expect players at the top of their basketball game to understand how sports actually work, but no. It even got as far as Aaron Gordon from Denver Nuggets saying on Instagram, "Whatever, I'm smoking body in 200 meters. No, you're not. I don't know what you guys are smoking in the NBA, but Noah Lyles is the fastest man in the world. Like, literally, with receipts. If these two competed in a sprint, it would be actually humiliating. But hey, maybe public humiliation is his king, so let's not be judgmental here. I made like 2 free shorts on the topic of American world champions, and they all went viral, with people losing their minds about it in the comments. On one hand, we have literally thousands of Americans in the comments defending their imaginary title, saying they're the best in the world. And then we have literally the rest of the world who easily understands the concept of being a world champion. Now, many people have brought up a lot of interesting points in the comments, so I'm making this longer video to address them and settle this once and for all. And let's be honest, I love the engagement too, so please keep getting triggered in the comments and call me names. But before we get into it, I want to make a few things very clear. Americans are incredibly good at sports, and their national leagues are really competitive. But the thing is, so is the rest of the world. And of course, Americans are sometimes world champions in some sports, but so is the rest of the world. And I'm not trying to generalize here because I've met some super smart Americans, some very modest and down-to-earth people. But it's hard to deny that many Americans are also some of the most delusional people I've ever met. Here we go. The first hint that you're not a world champion is literally in the name of your leagues: NBA, NFL, NHL. I hate to break it to you, but the N in the NBA stands for, drum rolls, What did you think I was gonna say? The N in the NBA stands for national. Hey Siri, what does NBA stand for?
NBA means in North America National Basketball Association. Do you want to hear the next one?
Even Siri knows. So when you win a national league, you are only a national champion. It's simple. Unless for some reason you think the USA is the world. Quick geography lesson. The United States, one country. The rest of the world, give or take 195 countries, depending on who you ask and when you ask. So when you win a national tournament with teams from one single country, you are never a world champion. Even if that league is the best in the world at that particular sport, like the NBA or NFL. To be a world champion, you need to win an international tournament with teams, not players, from all over the world. It's not a difficult concept. If you take any random 10-year-old from India, Romania, or Germany, they all understand what a world champion is. Now, I'm not suggesting that you talk to a random 10-year-old. That might be a bit weird. But for some reason, many Americans think it's just a title you claim without having to actually earn it on the field, kind of like a participation trophy. So maybe they just identify as world champions without actually being world champions. So it only matters how you feel, right? Let's look at each big sport internationally. And apologies to the ladies, but we'll look at the men's teams. Team Germany are the basketball world champions in 2023. So Germany, Canada, and Lithuania all beat the United States basketball team at the FIBA World Cup. And listen, I don't care if you send your B team because your stars couldn't be bothered to play, but you're supposed to be the best team in the world at basketball, and Lithuania beats you? Not only many of you don't even know where it is on the map, but Lithuania only has a population of 2.8 million people, 118 times less than the United States. I mean, no disrespect to my Lithuanian brothers and sisters, but that's humiliating. Canada is the hockey world champion of 2023. Oh no, another sport that they only play in the US. Team USA, not surprisingly, are American football world champions. And this is something I didn't know either, but many other countries around the world actually play American football, so it's not just an American sport. Argentina are football world champions 2022. You know, the original football that you play with your feet. Japan are the baseball world champions in 2023. Australia are the cricket world champions in 2023. I know many of us don't really watch cricket here in the West, but it's the second largest sport in the world. South Africa are the rugby world champions in 2023. You know rugby, right? It's like the manlier version of American football, but without protection. Italy are the volleyball world champions in 2022. Denmark are the handball world champions in 2023. And I could go on and on. And the way this works, because I can see in the comments that some of you don't really get it, every couple of years there's a new edition of the World Cup, so a new team can win it. So there can only be one world champion at a time, and everyone else really only cares about the current world champion. If you won the title 20 years ago, good for you, it's still an amazing achievement, but it's 20 years ago and we've moved on. Now, let's look at a few comments I received because this is where it gets really juicy. And I'm not cherry picking the comments because I got hundreds of people saying the exact same thing. Yusman CD something 6259 says, for basketball, NBA is basically the world champion. If America really sent its best players every year, we wouldn't lose. I see this argument all the time. If we sent our best players, if we cared, well, just do it. Send your best players, prove it on the field, and then we'll see. Until then, the results speak for themselves. Like, imagine just sitting there and imagining you're the best without having to prove it on the field. How does that work? Alright, we got Spy Snatcher saying, players from all over the world compete. I mean, you're saying this like it's a unique thing that only happens in the US. I hate to break it to you, but there's a world outside the United States, and every single national league, whether it's basketball, football, whatever sport you want, every single national league in the world almost has players from other countries. You know, maybe just like North Korea only has North Korean players in their national league, but every country in Europe has foreign players in their national leagues. Fact, not even debatable. It's not a unique feature. It's everywhere. All right, we got Charles Berrien saying, I love how butthurt the world is over America, LOL. I don't know how to tell you this, but the rest of the world is just laughing at you. So we got Oren Pine 10 saying, USA back-to-back World War champions. Well, not exactly a sport, but remind me again, in the Second World War, who made it to Berlin first? Was it the Americans or was it Russia? Then we have XZ Alexander saying, impossible because they are the worst in the world at chess by losing 2 towers in one move. Jesus, you guys are so unhinged in the comments. Oh, and by the way, the best chess player in the world is Magnus Carlsen, I believe his name is, Norwegian. Alright, we got Average 69 Enjoyers 77 saying, we're gonna have to wait till London gets an NFL team and they might still suck. Did this guy just assume London is a country? Oh, I love this one. So we got Sinuzi saying, USA 59 Super Bowl wins, Rest of the world, 0 Super Bowl wins. You are hating on the world champions because you have never won a Super Bowl. And what's really concerning about this is that 1,700 people have liked this comment, basically agreeing with this deluded comment. And it's not the only comment like this that I got. There's hundreds others. Listen, dude, I don't know how to explain this to you, but only the United States can compete in the Super Bowl. So imagine bragging that you won the Super Bowl, only your country has won it, when only your country participates. Yeah. Alright, we got Jazz Nico Dansby saying they are from Canada too. So I guess if you have one Canadian team in the NBA, which is Toronto Raptors, literally at the border with the United States, and then you have a few hockey teams from Canada, I believe, playing in the NHL, basically that makes it international. And yeah, Canada and the United States, that basically represents the entire world. So whoever wins that tournament is a world champion. Alright, then we got Timmy being silly. The reason we say World Championship is because all the best players around the world come to America to play, so whoever wins the championship in a league with the best players from other countries would be World Champion. Alright, this is also the logic of someone who's never been outside the United States. If we take the exact same logic and apply it to football, in Europe, arguably the most competitive league in Europe is the English Premier League. It has the best players, the best coaches, the most money, and it's also one of the most balanced leagues. And I say this as a fan of Barcelona, the Premier League is the best by far. However, it's just one national league. So when Manchester City wins the Premier League, nobody calls them world champions. In fact, Manchester City won the Premier League almost like every single year in the past 10 years. But when they go to play in an international competition like the Champions League, they've only won it once. So it just goes to show, even if you win the national league and like the best league in the world for that particular sport, when you go on an international level, you still have to compete against other teams in an international competition. Otherwise, you're not a European champion and you're not a world champion either. Tank Broman 2053 says, we think we're the best because we have the most Olympic medals, which technically makes us statistically the best. Yeah, I don't even know where to start that one. That's not exactly how sports work. So if you're the best in the world at bobsleigh, that has nothing to do with basketball, for example, right? Okay, but let's analyze this a little bit deeper, right? So USA by far, judging by absolute numbers, has the most gold Olympic medals in the world. But you also have to take into consideration the fact that the USA is one of the biggest countries in the world with like 330 million people. So a fairer comparison with other countries is to adjust the gold medals per capita. So if you do this sort of adjustment, you can see that the USA doesn't even make it in the top 20. You got small countries like Romania, Sweden, Bulgaria, Austria, Hungary, all of them having more gold medals per capita than the United States. But again, if this entire argument doesn't really matter, because if you're the best in the world at a sport or multiple sports, it has nothing to do with the other sports. So you can only be world champion at a specific sport. Alright, we got Solo YT saying a real interesting comment. It'd be cool if more countries around the world started their own NBA teams. Now, my first instinct is to make fun of this person because you cannot really have teams outside the United States competing in a national league inside the United States. I guess there is one exception with Toronto Raptors, but I mean, Toronto is like so close to the US that like if you throw a stone from Toronto in Canada, it kind of lands in the United States, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it would be really cool to have this sort of competition, not an NBA, but like a different type of competition with the best basketball teams around the world. That would be really fun to watch. We got Nathan UE7448. Shouldn't have poked the bear. I'm the biggest Jokic and Luka fan, but they ain't stopping the Avengers. Now this is a really interesting point because you mentioned Jokic, Luka, and a couple of other foreign players in the NBA. In the last 6 years, the most valuable player in the NBA was a foreigner. So you're importing more foreigners because they are better than your American players. So we got Luka, we got like this Greek guy, I forgot his name, and another guy from Cameroon. Where do you think those players learned to play basketball? Now, I've never been to Cameroon, so I cannot comment on that, but Greece and Serbia have some amazing basketball teams and competitions. So those players weren't just born in their country, never touched a basketball in their life, flew over to the United States at 17 and started playing basketball. No, I can guarantee you they learned the basketball foundations in their country and they competed against really good players and teams. Because if there are no good teams, you're not going to be one of the best players in the world when you go to the NBA. It's simple as that, which basically proves my point that other teams have super competitive basketball leagues as well. Alright, so we have Todd ACF something. The reason Team USA doesn't really compete in world basketball is because the players aren't going to risk injury and possibly missing out on the NBA, which pays more than world basketball, because who TF watches world basketball? Alright, so I hate to break it to you, but there's an entire world outside of the United States. I know that you in particular has never been outside of the United States, so you don't know this, but every single country has their own individual basketball teams and their basketball fans, so the rest of the world watches world basketball and cares about it. You pretend like you don't care because you never win the FIBA World Cup. Now, back to the first part of this sentence. This is really interesting because it's hitting at a very important distinction, which I think it comes down to cultural differences between the United States and the rest of the world. It seems like most of the United States is based on the individual, like me winning as much as possible versus the collective winning as much as possible. And also like the main focus seems to be making as much money as possible. Money is super important, don't get me wrong, but I think for the rest of the world, there are also other things more important than money, like winning the World Cup for your country. I don't even know how to explain this, but for pretty much anyone else in the world, it feels like such an honor to represent your country. Because let's be honest, like most NBA players and most football stars in the world, they make loads of money. And I can say from personal experience, after a specific point, more money doesn't make you proportionally happy. You reach this point and anything extra that you make, you're just at the point of diminishing returns basically. And I'm gonna give you a super good example. We have Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, arguably the best football players of all time, right? And I'm not gonna make this between Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, like who's better, because Messi is better. But the point is, both of them are probably worth over $1 billion already. They won every single possible competition at club level, every single possible individual achievement and trophy. They won everything. But only a few weeks ago, we had Euro 2024 and Copa America, and we've witnessed an old Ronaldo and an old Messi competing for their national team because it means so much for them. And when I say it means so much for them, we have Cristiano Ronaldo who missed a penalty for Portugal and then he started crying because it literally meant so much for him. And then we also had Messi at Copa America getting injured in the final and he couldn't play anymore to help his team win the trophy, and he was seen on the bench crying for his team. And again, those players, they could earn a lot more money at their clubs, but they don't care about money because it means so much more for them to bring glory for their country. And yeah, it's a difference in the culture. In the US, it's all about the individual, not the country. I get it. But at the same time, I don't really get it. Like there's so many American sports players that don't even sing the national anthem and they just hate their country. How does that work? Alright, we got Temi something whatever. After this year's Olympics, you're gonna eat your words. Alright, we are days away from the Olympics getting started, so I look forward to seeing how this comment is gonna age. But even then, let me make this incredibly clear. The Olympics is a second-tier basketball tournament. Only the United States actually cares about the Olympics for some reason. It's a smaller competition than the FIBA World Cup. Only 12 teams compete. Compare that to 32 teams that compete in the World Cup. So you got less teams, you got continental quotas, and you have some of the best teams that are not even present. Like for example, Lithuania, who just beat the United States at the FIBA World Cup last year, is not present at the Olympics because there's no room. We only have 12 teams competing. So it's kind of like a cope mechanism. Like we only care about the Olympics, so we're gonna send our best players there, but we're not gonna send them at the FIBA World Cup, because imagine for a second you send your best players at the FIBA World Cup and you lose, then you really run out of excuses, because now you can just sit on your sofas and be like, yeah, but if we sent our best players, we would be winning, ha 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 ha. Send your best players. Let's see it on the field. All right, we got Juan Martin saying true, but at the same time, how many teams from around the world can be the current NBA champions or runner-ups? That's a very good question, actually. And it only happened, I believe, 4 times that we had the winner of the NBA play against the winner of the EuroLeague. And yeah, EuroLeague is a European competition, not a country competition, not a national league. But the reason we compared those two is because of the size of the population. With USA having around 300 something million people, and then Europe having around 700 million people, but 50 countries. So it's a better comparison like this. So we only had 4 instances, if I'm correct, where the NBA winner played against the EuroLeague winner, and the score is 3-1. So Barcelona actually beat the LA Lakers when they won the NBA with Kobe Bryant in his prime. And every single time the NBA winners beat the EuroLeague winners, the 3 times this happened, they only did it by a single-digit point difference. So sure, technically you guys won, but my point is European teams compete really well and would actually beat a lot of mid-table NBA teams easily. All right, we got PXPA Forested saying, I'm a firm believer that if America put our best athletes in soccer, football, we would win the World Cup. We just don't care. So this is a typical coping mechanism that I see Americans taking in the comments. Hundreds of them. We would be world champions, but we just don't care. And we just don't send our best athletes. Bro, you send your best athletes at the Football World Cup in 2022. And listen, kudos to the United States team because it was horrible and now they're decent. You actually qualified for the World Cup. You got out of the group stage all the way to the knockout phase where you got knocked out. And out of 4 games played, you won 1 game and lost 3 games. So, I mean, you're up there with like the best 16 teams in the world, I guess, but not world champions, bro. Meanwhile, in Miss Universe, Aliens, Miss Universe of what? The planet Earth. I didn't want to comment on this, but I've been getting this comment quite a lot about Miss Universe. So let's address it. Yes, there are no humans, as far as we know, outside of planet Earth. So technically calling it Miss Universe is a little bit of an exaggeration. But actually the Miss Universe contest, or beauty pageants I believe you call them, is very well organized and has a very similar structure to a World Cup. So first you have beauty pageants at a city level to determine who's the most beautiful woman in that particular city. Then you get the winners from every single city and they compete in a national competition to decide who's the most beautiful woman in that specific country. And then you get the Miss Poland, Miss Ukraine, Miss United States from every single country, and you have this international competition called Miss Universe. It's actually very well structured, but the point is nobody wins Miss United States and then thinks she's the most beautiful woman in the world. Now listen, I could go on and on with the comments because this is really fun, but I think I proved my point. Americans are great at sports, but to be a world champion, you have to prove it at the World Cup. It's simple. Until next time, stay the Lulu.